Hi guys, welcome to a new video. I'm glad you're here with me again. As you can remember in the last video, we finally implemented the whole JWT authentication filter. We tested it and everything. What I didn't do was testing the error messages. So in this video we're going to do that, and we're also going to be implementing the validation filter. That is going to be checked if the user already is sending a cookie. Okay, so let's begin with the error. And as you can see, we had the cookie last time. Where can I see it? Okay, so this is the cookie. Right now it should already be expired. So if we try to go to this controller, I have already created the controller, and we try to go to the JWT endpoint, then we're not going to be allowed to, because the cookie already expired. The cookie is only valid for 100 seconds, just like we put in the configuration. So let's test it, and you can see we get 401 unauthorized error, and it says sorry, authentication was not possible. And this is triggered automatically by the authentication entry point that we use here. So sorry, authentication was not possible, because the security context right now when we make the request is empty, because we're not sending any cookies, and we don't have any cookie to send actually. Okay, so let's check another one. So when we're going to be posting, so if we send a username that doesn't exist, like this one, it's going to also give you the error of, let me put this here, the unauthorized error, the invalid username or password that we set in the failure handler. And this says the invalid username or password with the error code and the HTTP status. Same thing for a wrong password. So we know that this username exists, and you can see that it's also being executed here. So bad credentials exception, you see. And if we try again here, you can see again that same message, because now the password is wrong, the bad credentials. And you can see that it also queried the database to actually check the password, check the username and everything. Okay, so that's that, and those are the only two exceptions that we can actually test right now, because the other one, that's the authentication ready exception, we cannot test it yet because we still have to make the validation filter. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the validation filter. So in the security, we're going to make a new class, and we're going to call JWT validation filter. This filter, make sure it's marked again with a component, and it has already the lock class. This class is going to be extending the OncePerRequestFilter. So every time a request is being triggered, it's going to run this validation filter, and that is exactly what we need. Okay, later on, when, for example, you don't want this validation filter to be run and executed when you access resources, or when you set, for example, you have some endpoints that doesn't need to be authenticated, then you will have to use another override method that is in this class also. I can show you really fast. Insert, and this override method is this one, and this one I think is the configure one, yes, this one. And with this method, you can actually make and ignore certain endpoints that you don't want this filter, so that you don't want Spring Security to monitor. Okay, but that's not what we're going to be doing, so you'll have to figure it on your own. So yes, let's implement the method. Let's break this down. Okay, that's okay. And the first thing we're going to be doing again is, because we're going to be needing a mapper again, so we're going to be making the final object mapper. Again, auto wiring the constructor JWT validation filter object mapper, and this over here just the same. And we also need another thing, that is the properties of the JWT, and we're going to also auto wire this JWT properties, and that's it. Okay, so we're going to be beginning implementing this method. First thing, we're going to be checking if the cookie is available. So cookie, and we're going to be using web utils from Spring Framework, and we're going to get cookie method, going to pass the request that is supposed to have the cookie or not, and the name of the cookie, and this cookie name we can get from the JWT properties class. Okay, so as you know, this one tries to get a cookie, so we have to actually check if there's a cookie. So if the cookie is not, or first, check if the cookie is null, so handle the exception first, or let's name this a better name, just like we did in the JWT filter, get value. So if the value is null, that's another condition, and also if the value is empty. So it's already again using the string utils and isBlank method, and check if the value is empty. If one of these conditions is true, then we're going to get the security context holder, and we're going to clear context to make sure that the context is clear and no user is authenticated, because you're not sending the cookie. Okay, and then we don't have to forget to do the filter chain, so the request can keep going. Otherwise it will stop here and you'll have problems. Okay, so if the cookie is a valid cookie, if it has something in it, we're going to check and validate the token in the cookie. So first, we're going to create the methods for validation. So let's create it here. So we have to make it private, or we can make it private because it's only going to be used in this class. So it's going to be returning a claims, and is going to be named validate token, and here we're going to pass the actual token that is supposed to be in the cookie. And here we're going to declare the claims, and we're going to wrap this in an exception. And yeah, there are a lot of type of exceptions. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to actually copy because there's a lot of type of exceptions to save time. So let's go in here and then in here, I think it is, yes. So don't look at it, don't cheat. I'm going to just copy this part and put it in here. Okay, so these are all the type of exceptions that we can get. Why? Okay, okay. Let me close that one. Okay, so all these are all the types that we can get when we try to validate the token. So the first thing we're going to do is use the claims and use the JWT as class again, and we're going to use the parser, and with the parser we're going to try to parse this token. So we need the signing key, and the signing key, as you know, is base64 encoded, so we have to encode it again here. So getting the secret again and encoded it just like we did before. So set the signing, so here we can set the signing key, and then we're going to parse claims, and here we're going to put the token that we're going to parse, and we're going to try to get the body, and the body is actually the claims, so the whole body, the payload. And then if anything goes wrong in this code when we try to parse it, it's going to be one of these exceptions. Either the signature is not good, maybe it's a malformed JWT, it can be an expired one, it can be an unsupported one, and an illegal one, something illegal happens. And for all of this we log the error, and then we throw an invalid JWT token exception that we created here that extends authentication exception, and we put the message that corresponds to every type of exception. So if everything goes and executes good and the JWTS class is able to parse the claims, then we're going to return the claims. And this method that we're going to create right now is to get the authentication object. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we're going to be returning and the username password authentication token. We're going to name the method get authentication, and here we're going to be passing the cookie that we have here. Okay, the first thing we want to do is extract the token from the cookie. So this JWT.cookie get value, JWT cookie that get value, and then the claims, all the information we're going to be get from this validate token. So if everything goes alright, it will return you the claims that we are going to be we just did here, so the whole body of this token. And with these claims, now we can get all the information out of it. The first thing we need is the username, which is the claims that get subject. So by this point everything went well, so the token is valid. So we're going to now create the authentication token so we can put it in the security context holder. Okay, so that's what we're doing right now, and we're going to check if the username is not null. So if there's a username, then we're going to get the rows and the roles we get by getting the claims.get, using the claims.get method, and we're going to use the object and the type that we want to cast it to. So right now it's a list. We know that it's a string array, but we need a list right now, so we're going to cast it to a list. Get roles property name, so you know this is the key. This is the key. I showed you in the last video that when we saw the information that is in the JWT, and then the class that we want to cast it to, which is the list class. When we have the roles, then we're going to create the new username authentication token, and we're going to return it automatically immediately. And for this token we need let me open this again to what we need. So we need in principle an object credential, but here we don't need the credentials because we're not going to authenticate anything. With the validation of the token and that everything went okay, we already know that this is a valid token, so we can immediately authenticate the user without going to the database. So the object principal is going to be of type new custom detail. That we created, and the username here is going to be the username that we got in the token. The password cannot be null, so we have to just enter empty password, and then we can just pass a new array list because we're not going to be using this row anyways. The row that we have to put is here. So the object credential, again, we can put it null, and this is the authority list that we have to make with the rows that we just extracted from the JWT cookie. So in order to do this, we have to check first if the rows is not null. If the rows is null, then just pass a new array list. Otherwise, we can string the row and then map every row to a new simple granted authority, and then we can collect it to a list. It can be any list, but we're going to just use the list. You can also collect it to a set or to a collection, anything you want, but we're going to be using a list here. So when that is done, at the end, if the username is null, we're going to be returning null. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to be returning this username password authentication that is already authenticated. So by doing this, by putting actually a row, we're saying that this user is authenticated. But remember, this is only done when this validation of the token goes well. If it doesn't go well, it throws an exception and this never gets called, this piece of code here. It goes directly to here where it gets catched. Okay, so right now we're going to be using this method and we're going to be calling it. So let's go back and we can start using the method. Okay, so first thing is to get the username Parser authentication token, with this authentication token, which you can use by this using the method that we just created and passing the cookie. And here you're going to check if authentication token is null. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to clear the context to make sure that no user is authenticated. Else, if it's not null, that means that there was a valid token, so the user can be and is authenticated. And by doing it this way, so authentication that erase credentials to make sure that there's no other credentials, even though we put no credentials, so we just put an empty or a null value, I think, yes. And then we're going to create a new context again, set the authentication, which is the authentication token, and then set it globally in the security context folder. Set context. And by doing this, we are actually telling Spring Security, okay, I have a user that is authenticated and I'm setting the context for it. Okay, and don't forget to call the filter chain so it doesn't get stuck. Okay, so as you can see, if you can notice, we only call the filter chain when there's no authentication or if there's authentication. If there's an error or an exception, we are going to catch it and we're going to handle the response right here. Because if we let it pass this method, it's going to throw an internal server error, and we don't want that. Because here in the OncePerRequestFilter, the authentication entry point doesn't work, and also the authentication failure handler doesn't work. Those are only for the authentication filter, not for the validation filter. Okay, so we're going to print stack trace here, and we're going to log the error like always, that get message. And here remember to clear the context again and setting the response again, content type, which is going to be application JSON again, because we're only working with JSON. If you want to work with anything else, if you want to redirect or something, it's up to you, but you will have to figure it on your own. Okay, so now the response again to set the status, which is HTTP status, that actually internal server error, because something went wrong and we don't know what it is. You can also set another error, maybe the unauthorized error, but I'm setting the internal server error, and remember to call the value this, and then we're going to use the mapper to write this value. So use the response to get a writer, and then use the class again, error response dot off, and then you can put a message with an error uncode unknown, because we don't know what happened. And yes, this is internal server error. So we can put like something, sorry, something happened, we don't know, something went wrong, and we will reassure them that our engineers are working on it. Okay, so remember, if anything happens here, any error happens here, it will be catched here and it will set the error right here, and it won't show the error itself, but something that we put as a user-friendly message. Okay, so that's it for the validation filter. We're going to test it really fast because the time is already too much. So let's test it right now. So let's run this project, let's rerun it, and I hope that everything goes okay. Oh no, everything cannot go okay because we still have to configure it in the JWT authentication config. So here we're going to auto-wireless it, validation filter, and then we're going to add the filter just like we did, but make sure that you add the filter before this authentication filter is run. Okay, so if the user tries to log in again, you can catch it before it logs in. Understand? So validation filter, and then before the username password authentication filter that class. So here, by doing this like this, we make sure that the user doesn't authenticate again and waste resources of your server if he's already authenticated. Okay, so now we can rerun. Make sure this is used by Spring, yes, and then we can use it in Postman. So as you can remember, last time we didn't manage to log in because we had an invalid username and password, but right now we do have user and hello. So let's authenticate again. Everything went okay. We got the cookie. Right now I have a problem with Postman, and I have to copy the cookie because Postman is not sending the cookie when I use localhost automatically. So I have to paste it here. Once I paste it here, it will work. So I send the cookie, JWT cookie, and then I send it again and try to log in again, and I will get the error, the authentication ready exception. You see? So you got the body, and it's going to say the forbidden error, and there's already a user authenticated log out first. And if you can remember, we set the forbidden HTTP status. Okay, so that's all. I hope you understand everything. If you didn't, leave it in the comments, and in the next video I'm going to do some wrap up, and I'm going to test the roles and see that everything is working with Spring Security. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Thank you for listening.